I zipped my suitcase. I double-checked that I had everything I needed for my upcoming business trip. As I made my way downstairs, I could hear Lila's voice coming from the kitchen. "Oh, do not worry about Ethan. She said he was going to be gone all week. We will have the place to ourselves." I paused and listened. Who was she speaking to? "I can't wait for our girls' night," Lila added. "It's been too long since we all got together." I relaxed, feeling silly for my brief suspicion. Of course, she was simply planning a get-together with her friends. When I entered the kitchen, Lila quickly ended her call. "Hello, honey," I said, giving her a quick kiss. "Are you all set for your girls' night?" Lila's smile was dazzling. "Absolutely. We're going to have a blast. You know how it goes when the girls get together." I nodded and took an apple from the fruit bowl. "Just don't party too hard. Remember what happened last time?" She laughed and waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Ethan, you worry too much. We are all grown women. We can handle ourselves." I shrugged and took a bite from my apple. "If you say so. Anyway, I better get going. My flight is in a few hours." Lila hugged me, her perfume lingering in the air. "Have a safe trip, honey. I will miss you." As I drove to the airport, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Lila had been distant recently. She's always on her phone working as an influencer. But I trusted her. We'd been married for 5 years and I was certain she loved me. I arrived at the airport and made my way to the check-in counter. The woman behind the desk frowned while typing on her computer. "I am sorry, Mr. Cooper, but there appears to be an issue with your flight," she said. I leaned forward, concerned on my brow. "What kind of issue?" She turned the screen towards me. "Your flight has been cancelled due to unexpected weather conditions. We can rebook you for tomorrow, but there are no more flights departing today." I exhaled. "Is there actually nothing available?" She shook her head, apologizing. "I am afraid not, sir. The storm system is very severe." I thanked her and took a step back from the counter, pulling out my phone to call my boss. "Hello, John." "Yes, it's Ethan. Listen, my flight has been cancelled. No, they won't be able to get me out until at least tomorrow." "I know. And I apologize. Is there a way to reschedule the meeting?" After a few minutes of back and forth, we agreed to postpone the trip completely. I hung up, feeling both relieved and frustrated. Then an idea hit me. Why not surprise Layla? I could get some wine. Maybe her favorite takeout, and join their girls' night with a smile. I went back to my car. The drive home was quick and traffic was mercifully light. I stopped at our favorite wine shop and purchased a bottle of the expensive red. Layla loved it. When I approached our house, I noticed a few unfamiliar cars parked on the street. I muttered to myself, "That looks like quite the party." I parked a little way down the street, not wanting to spoil the surprise. As I walked towards the house, I could hear music thumping inside. The curtains were drawn, but I noticed flashes of light as if someone had set up a party lighting system. I unlocked the front door and quietly slipped inside. The music was louder now, accompanied by laughter and voices. I placed the wine in my bags and moved towards the living room. That's when I overheard it. A man's voice was low and husky, saying something I couldn't quite understand. My heart started to race. What was happening? I moved closer to the living room. The pit in my stomach grows with each step. The door was slightly ajar, so I peered through the crack. What I witnessed shattered my world. My wife, Layla, was in the arms of another man. They were kissing passionately. Their hands caressing each other's bodies around them. 3 other women were in various stages of undress, laughing and drinking. I pushed open the door. My hands are shaking. Layla. My voice came out like a hoarse whisper. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to me. Layla's face flushed with alcohol. And arousal turned into a sneer. "Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You are not invited." The man holding her, whom I now recognize as David Cross, a local real estate mogul, laughed. "Well, if it is not the cuckold himself." I stood there frozen as the reality of the situation hit me. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, had been unfaithful to me. Not just cheating, but hosting an orgy in our home. How long I managed to choke out. Layla rolled her eyes. "Remove herself from David's arms." "Oh, please, as if you didn't know." One of the other women, who I vaguely recognized as Vanessa Miller, laughed. "He had no idea, right? What a pathetic situation." My face was burning with humiliation and rage, and my hands clenched into fists at my sides. David walked up to me, his smug grin making me want to punch him. "Listen, Ethan, why don't you be a good boy and run? The adults are having fun here." Something inside of me snapped. I pulled out my phone and began recording. "What the hell are you doing?" Layla shrieked and lunged for the phone. I kept it out of her reach. "Getting evidence," I said with a cold voice. "Now everyone get out of my house." David laughed. "Or what? You will cry too. Mommy." I met his gaze, letting my rage and disgust show. "Now I'm going to take legal action against all of you. I'm sure your wives would be very interested in this footage." The women's smiles faded. They began scrambling for their clothes, suddenly appearing less confident. I turned to Layla. "As for you, don't bother returning. We're finished." She opened her mouth to argue, but I interrupted her. I said we were done. "Get your belongings and get out. You have until I return to leave. Or I will have you removed without further notice." I turned and walked out of the house. Getting into my car, I could hear shouting and arguing from inside. I didn't care. I drove away. My mind is racing with revenge plans. Layla and her friends believed that they could humiliate me and get away with it. They were about to discover how mistaken they were. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying the scene I'd seen over and over. The image shows Layla and David's arms. The sound of their mocking laughter burned in my mind like a brand. As the initial shock subsided, a cold, calculated anger took its place. I found myself parked at a lookout point that overlooked the city. The lights twinkled below, oblivious to the anguish in my heart. I took out my phone and watched the video I had recorded. The sound of their laughter and cruel words fueled my rage. "You are not invited." Layla's voice sneered during the recording. I gripped the phone more tightly. My knuckles are turning white. How long was this going on? How long had I been the brunt of their jokes? The fool they made fun of behind my back. A notification appeared on my screen. A message from Layla. "Ethan, please come home. We need to talk." I laughed bitterly. She wanted to talk now. Now that she had been caught red-handed, I typed a response. My fingers flew across the keyboard. "There is nothing to talk about. I intended what I said. We're finished. Her response arrived almost immediately. Do not be like this. It was simply a bit of fun. You are overreacting. My blood boiled. Overreacting? I walked in on my wife having an orgy in our home and she thought I was overreacting. A little fun. I typed back. Is that considered betraying your husband? Are you humiliating me in front of your friends? Do not contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch. I turned off my phone because I did not want to see her response. The weight of what had happened came crashing down on me. My marriage was over. The life I had created. The future I had envisioned. Everything was gone in an instant. But as I sat there staring out at the city lights, an idea began to form in my head. Layla and her friends believed they could treat me this way and get away with it. They were about to discover how mistaken they were. I started my car and headed to a nearby hotel. I needed a place to think and plan. When I checked in, the receptionist gave me a concerned look. Are you okay, sir? She asked. You seem upset. I forced a smile. I am fine. Just had a long day. In my room. I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. It was time to collect information. I started with David Cross, the arrogant jerk who had been all over my wife. A quick search revealed that he was a well-known real estate mogul known for his flashy lifestyle and questionable business practices. Next, I looked up Layla's friends Vanessa Miller, Sophie Lang, and Rachel Green. On the surface, they all appeared to be leading perfect lives, loving husbands, successful careers, and active social media presences. But I knew better now. I knew the rot that lurked beneath their polished exteriors. As I dug deeper, I realized I needed assistance. This level of in-depth investigation was beyond my abilities. That's when I remembered Sam Parker, an old college friend who had gone into private investigation. I hadn't spoken with him in years, but if anyone could help me, it was Sam. I found his number and dialed it. My heart pounding as the phone rang. Parker, Investigations. A gruff voice responded, Sam, this is Ethan Cooper. There was a pause. Ethan. Damn, it has been a while. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need your help, Sam. It's about my wife and some of her friends. Sam's tone became more serious. What happened, Ethan? I told him everything. The cancelled flight returned home early. As I spoke, I happened upon a scene. My voice trembled with a combination of anger and pain. Jesus and Ethan. Sam said when I was finished. I apologize, man. That's rough. I need information, Sam. I spoke. My voice hardening. Everything you can learn about Layla, David Cross, and her friends. I want to know every skeleton in their closet, every dirty secret they are keeping. There was a lengthy pause on the other end of the line. Ethan, why do you want vengeance so badly? I gripped the phone more tightly. They humiliated me, Sam. They laughed at me, calling me weak and gullible. I will not allow them to get away with it. Sam sighed. Okay, Ethan, I'll help you. But promise me that you will not do anything illegal. I do not want to see you get into trouble. I promise. I promised even though I wasn't sure I could keep it. How soon can you start? I'll start right away, Sam replied. Give me a few days to find what I can. I will call you when I have something after hanging up. I leaned back in my chair feeling a ray of hope for the first time since I had walked in on Layla and her companions. They thought they recognized me. I assumed I was weak and easily dismissed. They were about to discover how mistaken they were. I spent the next few days in a state of anger and determination. I ignored Layla's increasingly desperate calls and messages. I contacted a divorce lawyer and began the process of ending my marriage on the fourth day. Sam called Ethan. "I have something," he said. "You may want to sit down for this." I settled down in a chair. My heart is racing. I am ready. "Sam, tell me everything." What Sam told me over the next hour made my blood turn cold. David Cross's. It turned out he was involved in far more than just shady real estate transactions. There were rumors of money laundering and bribes paid to city officials to look the other way regarding building code violations. Layla's friends had far from perfect lives. Vanessa Miller had been embezzling from her company for several years. Sophie Lang was addicted to prescription painkillers and frequently traded sexual favors for pills, while Rachel Green had an affair with her teenage stepson Jesus. I muttered as Sam completed his report. "They all are monsters." "What will you do with this information, Ethan?" Sam asked. His voice was full of concern. I stared out the window, my thoughts racing with possibilities. "I'm going to make them pay, Sam. I'm going to show the world who they truly are." "Ethan," Sam cautioned, "be careful. These people are wealthy and influential. They could ruin your life if they wanted to." I laughed. A cold, unfunny sound. "They already did, Sam. Now it is my turn." As I hung up the telephone, a plan began to emerge in my mind. Layla and her friends believed they were untouchable. They thought they could do whatever they wanted, without consequences. They were about to discover how mistaken they were. I opened my laptop and started writing, recounting every detail of what had happened. Every piece of information Sam had discovered. When I finished, I had a document that would shatter their carefully crafted facades. My finger was hovering over the send button. Once I did this, there was no turning back. But I remembered the sound of their laughter and the cruel glint in Layla's eyes as she informed me that I was not invited. I pressed send. The document was distributed to the husbands of Lila's friends, David Cross business partners, and local news outlets. I sat back, my heart pounding, waiting for the storm to clear. It did not take long. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with notifications. The scandal caused an uproar on social media. I watched from a distance as their idyllic lives crumbled around them. Layla described her voice as frantic. "Ethan, what did you do? How could you do this to me?" I laughed. "How could I? How could you? Layla, you brought this upon yourself." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead would be difficult. I knew that. However, for the first time since that fateful night, I felt in control. Layla and her friends had assumed they could walk all over me. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of purpose that I had not felt in years. The initial shock and pain of Layla's betrayal had turned into a cold, unwavering resolve. I checked my phone and scrolled through the notifications. The story had taken off overnight just as I had hoped. I opened my laptop and started digging deeper. Sam's information had been extremely valuable. But I knew there had to be more. I started with David Cross, the smug bastard who had been all over my wife. A quick search turned up a wealth of negative press complaints from tenants about Unsafe living conditions. There are whispers of bribery and corruption. I compiled it all into a dossier that painted a damning picture of the man Layla chose over me. Next, I focused my attention on Vanessa Miller. Her company's stock had plummeted following the discovery of her embezzlement. I discovered forum posts from angry investors demanding answers. I added their comments to my growing file. Sophie Lang's addiction had made front-page headlines. I discovered old police reports, incidents that had been overlooked. Her influential family discreetly concealed DUIs and public intoxication. Not anymore. And Rachel Green, her affair with her stepson had set off a firestorm of controversy. I discovered social media posts from outraged parents at the boys' school calling for her to be fired from her position as teacher. As I gathered all of this information, a plan began to form in my mind. Exposing their secrets was only the first step. Now I needed to ensure that they felt the full consequences of their actions. I picked up the phone and called Sam's number. He answered the second ring. "Ethan, what's up?" "Sam, I need more," I said, my voice tight and determined. "We have only scratched the surface." Sam sighed. "Ethan, don't you believe you've done enough? The story is everywhere. Their lives are in shambles." "That's not enough." I let out a growl. "I want to learn everything. Every dirty secret. Every skeleton in the closet. Can you do this for me?" There was a prolonged pause. "Ethan, this is dangerous territory. These individuals have money and connections. They could ruin your life." I laughed bitterly. "They already did, Sam. Now it is my turn. Will you help me or not?" Another pause. "Okay, Ethan, but promise me you'll be careful." "I'll dig deeper. See what else I can find." "Thank you, Sam. I owe you." After hanging up, I returned to my laptop. I had work to do. I started by making fake social media accounts. I intend to use them to spread the word further. As I worked on my phone, get a text from Layla. "Ethan, please, we need to talk. This has gone too far." I ignored it, concentrating on my task. Hours passed as I meticulously constructed my case against them, gathering evidence and strategizing my next steps. By nightfall, I had a comprehensive plan. I'd release the information in stages, maximizing damage. First, I would focus on their personal lives, then their careers. Finally, consider their reputations. As I closed my laptop, a smile appeared on my face. Layla and her friends believed they knew me. They were about to discover how mistaken they were. The next morning, I awoke early, ready to put my plan into action. I checked my phone and saw several missed calls from Layla and her friends. I deleted them without listening. I called Sam. "Morning, Ethan," he responded, sounding tired. "I have more for you." "Let us hear it," I replied, sitting up straighter. "David Cross has bribed city officials to overlook code violations in his properties. I have names, dates and amounts. It is all here." My heart raced. Perfect. What else? Vanessa Miller's embezzlement goes deeper than we suspected. She has been funneling money into offshore accounts for years, and Sophie Lang's pill addiction is only the tip of the iceberg. She has been visiting some high-end escort services, spending thousands of dollars each month. I nodded, taking notes on Rachel. Sam hesitated. Rachel had an affair with her stepson Ethan. There is evidence that it began before he became legal. We are discussing potential criminal charges here. My blood became cold. Jesus, those people. Ethan, Sam's voice was serious. This is huge. Very big. Are you positive? I remembered Lily's sneering face and David's mocking laughter. I am sure Sam brought this on themselves after hanging up. I spent the next few hours collecting new information. By midday, I was prepared. I started with David Cross. I shared the bribery information with a local investigative journalist. I knew within hours it made headline news. Next, I anonymously informed Vanessa's company about her offshore accounts. I watched with satisfaction as the company's stock fell. I sent evidence of Sophie's escort service visits to her husband and parents. Her pristine social image would never recover. And Rachel. I paused. The legal implications were serious. Finally, I decided to forward the information to the school board and delegate responsibility for the situation. As the day progressed, my phone exploded with notifications. The story was everywhere. Late that night, social media erupted with outrage and shock. My hotel room door was being pounded on. I opened it and found Lila. Her eyes were wild and mascara ran down her face. How could you? She screamed and pushed past me into the room. You have ruined everything. I closed the door calmly. I ruined everything. That's impressive coming from you. Layla whirled at me. It was simply a bit of fun. You did not have to ruin our lives over it. A little fun. I said it in a dangerously low voice. You have humiliated me. You and your friends treated me like a joke. So who is laughing now, Layla? She collapsed onto the bed and sobbed. Please, Ethan, make it stop. I will do anything. I looked at her. I had once loved this woman and now harbored cold contempt for her. It is too late for that, Layla. You've made your choice. You must now accept this reality. What do you want from me? She wailed. I went to the door and opened it. I want you to leave. We're finished. Layla, for good. As she stumbled out still crying, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. The game wasn't over yet, but I was winning and planned to see it through to the bitter end. The morning after my confrontation with Layla, I awoke feeling strangely refreshed. I checked my phone and scrolled through the barrage of notifications. The story had exploded overnight exactly as I had planned. I called Sam, eager for an update. Morning, Ethan. He responded. His voice groggy. You're awake early. I replied. Can't sleep. What is the latest? Sam sighed. It is chaos out there, man. David Cross is under multiple investigations. The feds are now involved. Vanessa Miller has been suspended pending an internal audit. Sophie Lang's husband has filed for divorce this morning and Rachel. Well, the police are investigating the situation with her stepson. I nodded. Good. They are receiving what they deserve. Ethan. Sam's voice was hesitant. Don't you think this is sufficient? You have made your point. I gripped the phone more tightly. No, Sam. It is not enough, not yet. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and went to work. I had more ammunition to deploy. First, I focused on David Cross. I'd withheld some of the most damning evidence, waiting for the appropriate moment. Now I've leaked documents proving that he knowingly rented out apartments with dangerous mold infestations, putting families at risk. Next, I turned to Vanessa Miller. I released Emails revealing that she had been cooking the books for years, implicating several other high-ranking executives in her company. For Sophie Lang, I had saved the most shocking revelation for last. I anonymously informed a tabloid about her secret love child who was hidden away at a private Swiss school. And Rachel. I paused again. The situation with her stepson was already tense. But then I remembered her cruel laugh. She looked at me with disdain. I sent an anonymous email to the local news station implying the full scope of her relationship with the boy. My phone buzzed incessantly while I worked. I ignored calls from Layla and her friends. But one name caught my attention. David Cross's curiosity got the better of me. I responded. "You son of a bitch." David's voice was a low growl. "Do you think you can do this to me?" I laughed coldly and without humor. "I am not doing anything to you, David. Your own actions are catching up to you. I will destroy you." He snarled. "When I am done with you, you will wish you were never born. Bring it on." I said, my voice steady. "You have already taken everything from me. I have nothing more to lose." I hung up. My heart is racing. David's threat should have frightened me. But instead, it fueled my determination. I wasn't about to back down now. Hours passed as I continued to strategically release information while watching the chaos unfold. By the evening, my phone was ringing non-stop. I ignored the majority of the calls. But when Sam's name appeared on the screen, I responded. "Ethan. Things are out of control," Sam said. His voice urgent. "There are reporters camped outside your home. Layla is being pursued everywhere. She goes. David Cross is issuing threats. You have to be careful. I understand your concern, Sam. But I can handle myself." After hanging up, I sat back and considered my next move. The seeds of discord had been planted. It was time to watch them grow. I ordered room service and settled in for the night. My laptop is open, keeping an eye on the aftermath. As I ate, my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Bluebird Cafe tomorrow. At 2 p.m. Come alone for Vanessa Miller." I stared at the message, considering my options. It could have been a trap, but my curiosity was piqued. What did she want? I typed a reply. "I will be there." The next day I arrived at the Bluebird Cafe early and chose a table with a good view of the entrance. Vanessa walked in at exactly 2 p.m. She looked awful. Her usual polished appearance was replaced with dark circles under her eyes and disheveled hair. She slid into the seat across from mine, her eyes darting around nervously. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You've got to stop this." I leaned back and studied her. "Why should I?" Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "You do not understand these people. They are dangerous. David Cross. He isn't who you think he is." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, who is he?" She looked around again before leaning in closer. "He has connections, Ethan. Dangerous ones. The types of people who make problems disappear." "Are you threatening me, Vanessa?" I inquired. My voice cool. She shook her head furiously. "No, I warn you for your own good. Please, Ethan. Let this go before anyone gets hurt." I stood up and looked down at her. "The only people who are hurt are those who deserve it. You made your bed, Vanessa. Now lie in it." I walked out of the cafe. I could hear Vanessa's muffled sobs behind me, but I had no sympathy. They had not shown me any mercy. Why would I show them any back in my hotel room? I took out my phone and dialed Sam's number. Sam, I need you to investigate David Cross's connections. Vanessa alluded to something dangerous. I want to know what we're dealing with. Sam sighed deeply. Ethan, perhaps it's time to back off. You have made your point. No, I replied firmly. I'll see this through to the end. Will you help me or not? There was a long pause before Sam responded. All right, I'll see what I can dig up. But, Ethan, take care. This is becoming serious. I hung up with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The game was escalating. The stakes were rising. But I was prepared. Layla and her friends had underestimated me once. They would not make that mistake again. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of my phone buzzing constantly. I grabbed it and squinted at the screen. It was Sam. Ethan, turn on the news now. I fumbled for the remote and turned on the television. My jaw dropped when I saw the headline scroll across the bottom of the screen. David Cross, a real estate mogul, has been arrested in a massive corruption scandal. In an unexpected twist, the news anchor's voice filled the room. David Cross, a prominent real estate developer, was arrested early this morning on charges of bribery, fraud, and racketeering. According to sources close to the investigation, anonymous tips helped uncover a vast network of corruption involving city officials and dangerous criminal elements. I sat back, a combination of satisfaction and disbelief washing over me. I had started the ball rolling, but this exceeded my wildest expectations. My phone vibrated again. It was Layla. What did you do? Her voice was shrill and panicky. The cops were just here. Ethan, they're asking questions about David. This is about all of us. I laughed. A cold, unfunny sound. I have not done anything, Layla. The truth is finally being revealed. That's all. You bastard, she hissed. You have ruined everything. I will never forgive you for this. Funny, I responded. My voice hard. I was thinking the exact same thing about you. I hung up, returning my attention to the television. The story was everywhere and dominated every channel. David Cross's face was plastered across the screen. His usual smug expression replaced with shock and fear as he was led away in handcuffs. As the day went on, more details emerged. Vanessa Miller had been detained for questioning. Sophie Lang's husband had revealed her infidelities, casting a negative light on her character and Rachel. The police were now officially involved, hating her relationship with her stepson. I watched it all unfold with satisfaction. Knowing they had believed they were untouchable, that they could do whatever they wanted without consequence. They were realizing how wrong they were. Mid-afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Sam. Ethan. This is getting out of hand, he said, his voice tight with concern. David Cross's arrest. There's talk about mob connections. This is dangerous territory. I paced the room. Adrenaline is coursing through my veins. Sam, I'm not backing down. They brought this upon themselves. Sam sighed deeply. I understand you're hurt, Ethan, but this vendetta is consuming you. Is it actually worth it? I paused to consider his words. Was it worthwhile? I remembered Lila's sneering face, David's mocking laughter, and how humiliated I had felt. Yes, I replied firmly. It is worth it. After hanging up, I went back to my laptop. The story spread like wildfire across social media. I had made several anonymous accounts, which I now used to fan the flames, drop hints, and spread rumors. As evening fell, I ordered room service and sat in front of the television. The scandal continued to dominate the news. Experts were brought in to discuss the implications, to speculate about the depth of the corruption. My phone vibrated with a text. The call was from an unknown number. Do you think you have one? This is not over. Keep an eye on your back. I stared at the message. A shiver ran down my spine. Was it from David? One of his associates. For the first time, a glimmer of doubt entered my mind. Have I gone too far? I shook off the feeling. No, I could not back down now. I was in too deep. I needed to see this through to the end. The next morning I awoke early and went out. I needed to see the consequences for myself. As I walked down the street, I could feel people looking at me. People whispered, pointing. The story had spread beyond the news and became the talk of the town. I passed Lila's favorite coffee shop through the window. I could see her sitting alone with her head in her hands. For a brief moment I felt a twinge of nostalgia, not regret. Then I remembered her cruel words and mocking laughter, and the emotion faded as I turned the corner. I almost ran into Vanessa Miller. She looked awful. Her eyes were red-rimmed and wild. "You," she hissed and grabbed my arm. "Do you have any idea what you did?" I shook her off with a cold voice. "Vanessa, I have done nothing but expose the truth. You did this to yourself." She laughed. A high-pitched hysterical sound. "The truth. Ethan, you don't know the half of it. You've stumbled upon something much larger than you realize. David's friends. They are not the types of people you want to cross." I felt a tinge of unease, but I pushed it down. "Is this a threat?" Vanessa's eyes darted about nervously. "This is a warning. For your own good. Ethan, back off before it's too late." As she hurried away, I stood still. Her words echoed in my mind. For a moment I considered heeding her warning. But then I thought about everything they'd done. Everything they'd taken from me. No, I could not stop now. I was going to see this through. Whatever the cost. I took out my phone and dialed Sam's number. "Sam, I need you to delve deeper into David Cross's connections. There is more going on here than we realize." Sam's voice was hesitant. "Ethan, maybe it's time to take a step back. This is becoming dangerous." I gripped the phone tighter. "No, Sam, I am seeing this through. Can you help me or not?" After a long pause, Sam sighed. "Okay, but be careful, Ethan. I mean it." After hanging up, I returned to my hotel room. The streets were alive with gossip. Everyone's talking about the scandal. I overheard conversations as I walked. "Have you heard about David Cross?" I knew there was something off about that Lila woman. Poor Ethan Cooper. Could you imagine walking in on that? I smiled. They had no idea. Back in my room, I turned on the television. The scandal continued to dominate the news. A reporter stood outside the police station where David was being detained. According to sources close to the investigation, Mr. Cross may be involved in organized crime. The extent of these connections is still unknown, but I leaned forward and listened carefully. This was new information. Had Sam discovered anything? My phone broke. A text from Lila. "We need to talk now. Meet me at our meeting spot in an hour." I stared at the message, considering my options. It could have been a trap, but my curiosity got the best of me. I texted back a simple okay and prepared to leave. An hour later, I arrived at Our destination, a small park where Lila and I used to picnic when we first started dating. She was already present, pacing nervously. "Ethan," she said as I approached. "You've got to stop this." I laughed coldly. "What's the point?" "Lila, I am not doing anything. The truth is coming out. That is all." She snatched my arm. Her eyes wild. "You do not understand, David. He is dangerous. More dangerous than you realize. He has connections, Ethan. The types of connections that cause people to disappear." I shook her off. "Is this a threat?" She hissed. "This is a warning. For your own good, please, Ethan. I understand I have hurt you, but this is too much. People are going to be hurt." I stared at her, looking for any traces of the woman I had loved. I only saw fear and desperation. "You should have considered that before deciding to humiliate me," I replied coldly. "You made your decisions, Lila. Now deal with the consequences." As I walked away, I could hear her pleading behind me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to show weakness right now. I returned to the hotel and found Sam waiting for me in the lobby. He said, "We need to talk. I discovered something up in my room." Sam spread a series of documents across the bed. "David Cross is not only involved with the mob," he said, "he's an important player. Money laundering, extortion, you name it. And Ethan, he has people in high positions, including judges, politicians, and even some cops." I felt a shiver go down my spine. "What are you saying, Sam?" He looked at me with serious eyes. "Ethan, I believe you've stepped into a dangerous situation. These people do not play by the rules. They'll do anything to protect themselves." I sat down heavily on the bed. "So what should we do? We need to be strategic about this. We cannot stop now. But we need to be cautious. I have some contacts in the FBI. Perhaps it is time to bring them in." I nodded slowly. "Do it. But Sam, take care. I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire." He gave me a smile. "It is too late for that, buddy. We're in it together now." As Sam left to make his phone calls, I returned my attention to the television. The news broadcast footage of David being led into court for his bail hearing. He appeared haggard. His usual confidence gone. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Then I recalled Lila's warning and felt a surge of determination. They had tried to break and humiliate me. Now it was their turn to feel the pain, regardless of what it took. I was going to see this through until the end. The next few days were a blur of news reports, covert meetings with Sam, and an ever-present sense of unease. The scandal had exploded beyond my wildest expectations, engulfing not only Lila and her friends, but also the highest levels of local government. I was in my hotel room scrolling through the latest news updates when my phone rang. The number was unknown. "Hello?" I responded cautiously. "Is it Ethan Cooper?" A woman's voice inquired. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Jessica Reynolds. I am an attorney. I have been following your case and I believe we should talk." I paused. "What about protecting you, Mr. Cooper, and ensuring justice is served?" We agreed to meet at a small cafe the following day. I hung up with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Was this just another trap? Or could it be the ally I needed? The next morning I arrived early at the cafe and chose a table with a good view of the entrance. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman entered. She was tall with short dark hair and sharp eyes that scanned the room before focusing on me. "Mr. Cooper?" she asked, holding out her hand. Jessica Reynolds? I shook her hand. Please call me Ethan. What can I do for you, Miss Reynolds? She sat down. Her posture upright and professional. It is not something you can do for me, Ethan. This is what I can do for you. I specialize in cases of corruption and organized crime. And from what I've seen, you're in the midst of a dangerous situation. I leaned back and studied her. And why do you want to help me? Jessica's eyes flashed. I've seen far too many people get away with this type of behavior. The rich and powerful believe they are above the law. It's about time someone stood up to them. I nodded slowly. All right, I am listening. What do you plan for the next hour? Jessica mapped out a plan. She would act as my legal representative, assisting me in navigating the complex web of lawsuits and countersuits that were bound to arise. More importantly, she was acquainted with federal prosecutors who were interested in the case. This is more than a simple scandal, Ethan, she explained. We are discussing RICO charges and potential indictments of public officials. But it will be a long, difficult fight. I met her gaze steadily. I am not afraid of a fight. She smiled with a sharp predatory expression. Good, because they'll throw everything they've got at you. As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of purpose knowing Jessica was on my side. I finally saw a clear path forward. Over the next few weeks, the case exploded. David Cross was indicted on several federal charges. Vanessa Miller testified as a state witness, revealing a complex web of fraud and embezzlement spanning several major corporations. Sophie Lang's husband came forward with damning evidence of her infidelity and drug use. And Lila was a ghost. She advanced from public view with her social media account silent. Part of me wondered where she was and what she was doing, but I pushed those thoughts away. I couldn't afford to be distracted right now. One evening, while I was reviewing documents with Jessica in my hotel room, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to see Sam looking haggard and nervous. Ethan, we need to talk. He said this while pushing past me into the room. Jessica stood up. Who is this? It's okay. I reassured her. This is Sam, a friend. He's been helping me. Sam paced the room. Ethan, things are spiraling out of control. I've been receiving threats. Someone broke into my office last night. I felt a shiver go down my spine. Are you okay? Have they taken anything? He shakes his head. I am fine. And no, they did not get anything significant. But Ethan, this is serious. These people aren't playing around. Jessica stepped forward. Mr. Sam. I am Jessica Reynolds, Ethan's lawyer. I believe it is time we included you in our legal protection. Sam looked at her and then at me. Legal protection? Ethan, what have you gotten into? I put one hand on his shoulder. We are doing the right thing, Sam. We are exposing the truth. He laughed bitterly. The truth. Ethan, do you remember why we started this? It was about Layla regarding what she did to you. Now look at us. For the love of Christ, we're taking on the mob. His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. He was correct. How did things get so out of control? Jessica cleared her throat. Gentlemen, I understand that this is personal for both of you, but we have to stay focused. We're on the verge of exposing one of the city's most serious corruption cases ever. We cannot back down now. I looked at Sam and saw fear in his eyes. Then I remembered Layla's mocking laughter and David's smug expression. She's correct. I said, we can't stop now, Sam. I'm sorry you were dragged into this, but we're doing the right thing. We need to see it through. Sam gave me a long stare, before slowly nodding. All right, but Ethan, take care. Do not lose yourself in this. As Sam left, I turned to Jessica. He's correct, you know. This has grown far beyond my initial expectations. She placed a hand on my arm. Her touch is surprisingly gentle. That's how things usually go, Ethan, but you've started something significant. Something that could make a significant difference. I looked at her. I looked at her for the first time. Behind her professional demeanor, I saw a passion and determination that mirrored my own. Thank you. I spoke softly for everything. She smiled genuinely this time, not the sharp predatory one I'd seen previously. We're in this together, Ethan, until the very end. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I reflected on how much my life had changed in just a few weeks. I'd lost my wife, my home, and my sense of security. But I also gained something, a purpose or mission. And as I fell asleep, I realized that for the first time since that fateful night, I felt a sense of hope. The morning sun streamed through the hotel room curtains, jolting me awake from a restless sleep. I reached for my phone and began scrolling through the notifications that had accumulated overnight. More information about the scandal, more revelations mean more arrests. A knock on the door startled me. I opened it and found Jessica. Her usual professional demeanor was tinged with excitement. We have something big for you, Ethan. She spoke as she pushed past me into the room. The feds are closing in on David Cross today. They're going to switch him. I blinked, attempting to process the information. Flip him. You mean he's going to talk? Jessica agreed in exchange for a reduced sentence. He is going to give up on everyone, politicians, judges and business leaders. This is going to be a bloodbath. I sat down heavily on the bed. Jesus, what should we do now? Jessica's eyes gleamed. Now we are preparing for the storm. Because when David starts talking, all hell will break loose. We spent the next few hours strategizing, preparing statements and communicating with Jessica's contacts at the prosecutor's office. By mid-afternoon, David Cross had, in an unexpected turn of events, agreed to cooperate with federal authorities. My phone broke. A text from Layla. Turn on the television now. Curious. I turned on the news. My jaw dropped when I saw Layla on screen, standing at a podium surrounded by reporters. What the hell? I muttered. Jessica moved closer, her gaze narrowing. What is she doing on screen? Layla began to speak. Her voice steady, but her gaze wild. I understand that many of you have questions about the recent events involving my husband, Ethan Cooper, and our friends. I'm here to set the record straight. I leaned forwards. My heart is pounding. Ethan Cooper is not the victim that he claims to be. Layla continued. He is a manipulative, vindictive man who has orchestrated the entire scandal for personal gain. Jessica cursed beneath her breath. She's trying to get ahead of the story and discredit you before David's testimony becomes public. I could barely hear her. My gaze remained fixed on the screen as Layla continued her character assassination. Ethan has always been envious of our success and of our friends. When he discovered our indiscretion, he saw a chance for vengeance. He has fabricated evidence, manipulated the media, and used his connections to harm innocent people. I felt a surge of rage. Innocent? Is she serious? Jessica put her hand on my arm. Do not let her get to you, Ethan. This is desperate. Move across the screen. Layla's gaze seemed to bore into me. I'm calling on the authorities to look into Ethan Cooper's finances and relationships. You'll discover that he's the real criminal here. As Layla finished her statement, the room erupted with reporters' questions. I turned off the television, my hands shaking with rage. That's lying and manipulative. I couldn't even complete the sentence. Jessica was already using her phone. I am calling the prosecutor's office. We need to move ahead of this. I paced the room, my thoughts racing. She's attempting to turn things around on me. Make me the bad guy. Jessica glanced up from her phone. It will not work, Ethan. We have too much evidence. David's testimony will bury them all. I stopped pacing when a thought struck me. Unless. Unless what? Jess asked. Her voice was sharp. Unless it's a distraction. I spoke slowly. What if they're attempting to buy time by destroying evidence or getting people out of the country before David speaks? Jessica's eyes widened. Shit, you might be correct. She was back on the phone in an instant. We need to move right now. The following several hours were a blur of activity. Jessica worked with the prosecutors and FBI to get them to move faster. I worked with Sam, going through our files for any information that could be useful. As night fell, we received the news we had been waiting for. David Cross had begun his testimony, and it was even more damning than we expected. I sat in Jessica's office and watched the news unfold on her computer screen. David, looking haggard and defeated, spilled secret after secret as names were named. Deals were exposed. A vast network of corruption was exposed. We did it. I muttered almost in disbelief. Jessica squeezed my shoulder. You did it, Ethan. You started it all. I looked up to her. I saw admiration in her eyes. I felt a flicker of something, attraction, connection, but I pushed it aside. Now was not the time. What will happen now? I asked. Jessica sat down beside me. Now the real work begins. Trials, testimonies, further investigation is needed. This will cause long-term consequences. I nodded slowly. Layla, the others. They will be brought in for questioning. Jessica said. Layla's little press conference stunt could be used against her. Obstruction of justice? Maybe. I leaned back in my chair, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. Is it really over? Jessica smiled, a rare and genuine expression. This section is over. But Ethan, you started something huge here, something important. Are you ready for what's next? I met her gaze and felt a surge of determination. Bring it on. We sat there watching the news as it unfolded. I realized it wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was not even about Layla or her betrayal. This was about justice. About exposing the truth, regardless of the cost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt fully alive. The weeks following David Cross's testimony were a blur of activity. Arrests have been made, indictments were issued, and the city was in uproar. Through it all, Jessica and I worked tirelessly to provide evidence, make statements, and navigate the complex legal landscape. As I sat in Jessica's office reviewing documents, one morning, she let out a triumphant gleam in her eyes. We've got her, Ethan. She said. Layla has been arrested. I stood up. My heart is racing. What? When? This morning. The feds picked her up from her parents' house. It turns out she was more involved in David's schemes than we suspected. I sank back into my chair, a wave of emotion washing over me. What will happen now? Jessica sat at the edge of her desk. Now we are preparing for the trial. It's going to be huge, Ethan. Your testimony will be crucial. I nodded slowly. I am ready. Whatever it takes to get justice done. Over the next few months, I worked closely with Jessica and the prosecutors to prepare for the trial. We spent many hours reviewing evidence, practicing my testimony, and strategizing. Jessica gave me a soft look one evening as we were finishing up a particularly difficult session. You know, Ethan, I've never seen anyone handle this kind of pressure like you have. You are remarkable. I felt a warmth spread across my chest. I could not have done it without you, Jessica. You've been doing well. You have been amazing. She smiled, and for a brief moment, the professional facade fell away. I noticed the woman behind the lawyer and felt drawn to her. In a way I hadn't in years. Jessica, she raised her hand. Ethan, please wait. Let us get through this trial first. Then we can discuss what happens next. I nodded in understanding. We needed to stay focused. There would be time for personal issues later. The trial became a media sensation. Day by day, I sat in the courtroom watching as Layla, David, and their accomplices were exposed for who they truly were. When it was my turn to testify, I felt a calm resolve wash over me. Mr. Cooper, the prosecutor started. Can you tell us what happened the night you discovered your wife's infidelity? I took a deep breath and started speaking. I told the court everything. From the cancelled flight to the shocking scene I witnessed. I described the mocking laughter, the cruel words, and the complete humiliation I felt while speaking. I felt Layla's gaze on me. But I did not look at her. She no longer held any power over me. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the verdicts were delivered. Guilty. All of them. Layla, David, Vanessa, Sophie, Rachel. They were all headed to prison. As we exited the courthouse, journalists swarmed around us. Mr. Cooper, how do you feel about the verdict? I looked at Jessica, who gave an encouraging nod. Justice has been served, I replied firmly. Not just for me, but for everyone who was harmed by their behavior. It is time for our city to recover and move forward. Later that night, Jessica and I sat in her office with a bottle of champagne. We did it, she said, raising her glass. You did it, Ethan. I clinked my glass with hers. We did it together. She set her glass down and stared at me intently. Ethan, I think it's time we had that conversation. I felt my heart rate increase. I agree. I've been working with you for the past few months. I have never met anyone like you, Ethan. Your strength, determination, and integrity. I have developed feelings for you. I reached out to take her hand. Jessica, I feel the same way. You've been my rock throughout this. I'm not sure what I would have done without you. She smiled a brilliant, genuine smile that illuminated her entire face. So, what are you saying? Are you prepared for a new beginning? I leaned in and kissed her gently and sweetly. I am more than ready. Life seemed to be settling into a new normal. Everything has changed again. Sam called me on a quiet Sunday morning. Ethan, turn on the news now. I turned on the television and my jaw dropped. Layla was standing outside the prison surrounded by reporters. What the hell? I muttered. Jessica, who had been staying over, came to stand beside me. What's happening? On the screen, Layla began speaking. I have new evidence that will clear my name and reveal the true criminal behind all of this. Ethan Cooper. I felt blood draining from my face. What's she talking about? Jessica was already using her phone. I'm calling the DA. This must be some kind of trick. However, over the next few days, it became clear that Layla and David still had one card to play with. They claimed to have evidence that I was behind the entire scandal, manipulating events to frame them. This is ridiculous. I fumed at Jessica. They're desperate. Nobody will believe them. But doubt had been sown. The media, always looking for new angles, began to question my involvement in the events. Old friends began to distance themselves. Even Sam appeared unsure. "Ethan," he said one day, his voice hesitant. "You would tell me if this was true, right? If you had accomplished anything." I looked at him, hurt and angry. "How could you possibly ask me that, Sam, after everything we've gone through?" He raised his hands. "I am sorry. I had to ask." As the pressure increased, I felt myself cracking. Had I gone too far in my quest for vengeance? Had I crossed a line somewhere? Jessica remained a steadfast supporter. "We'll fight this, Ethan," she assured me. "We have truth on our side." But the truth I was discovering was a fragile thing. Easy to distort and question. Everything came to a head. One rainy night I was alone in my apartment. Jessica had gone to meet with the district attorney when there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, I saw Lila standing there. "Hello, Ethan," she said with a cold voice. "We need to talk." I let her inside. My mind raced. What was she doing here? Lila paced the room, staring around with disdain. "How the mighty have fallen," she sneered. "What do you want, Lila?" I inquired, my voice tight. She turned to face me, her gaze hard. "I want you to confess, Ethan. Admit it. You set us up. You manipulated everything." I laughed bitterly. "You are delusional, Lila. You did it to yourself. You and your friends." She moved closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Are you certain about that, Ethan? Are you certain you haven't gone too far? Did not allow your rage or desire for vengeance to drive you to do things you never thought possible?" For a moment, just a moment, I felt a glimmer of doubt. Have I gone too far? But then I remembered the night I walked in on them. The laughter, the mockery, the complete disregard for my feelings. "Get out, Lila," I said with a cold voice. "You have lost. Accept this and move on." She gave me a long stare before turning and walking to the door. She did, however, return my gaze before leaving. "This is not over, Ethan. Definitely not." After she had left, I called Jessica. "Lila was just here," I told her. "She tried to get me to admit to setting them up." Jessica's voice was sharp and concerned. "Ethan, we have to be careful. They're becoming desperate. There's no telling what they'll do." She was correct. Over the next few weeks, Lila and David's accusations became increasingly outrageous. They claimed that I bribed witnesses, fabricated evidence, and even threatened people to testify against them. However, their desperate ploy backfired as their claims became increasingly ridiculous. People started to see through them. The tide of public opinion shifted back in my favor. It all culminated in a dramatic court hearing. Lila and David's lawyers presented evidence that proved to be nothing more than hearsay and conjecture. Jessica ripped their arguments apart, exposing their claims as desperate lies. Finally, the judge dismissed their claims while also charging them with perjury and attempting to pervert the course of justice. Jessica took my hand As we were leaving the courthouse for the last time. "It's really over now. Ethan," she said. Quietly, "You won." I looked at her. This incredible woman who had supported me throughout it all. "No," I said, clutching her hand. "We won." We walked down the courthouse steps together into an exciting future full of possibilities. It had been a long and difficult journey, but I had emerged stronger. I'd exposed the truth. I've seen justice done, and I found love in the most unexpected place. As we drove away, leaving the courthouse and everything it represented behind, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The chapter of my life that began with betrayal and pain was finally over. A new one full of hope and promise had just begun. And this time, I was prepared for whatever challenges might arise. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.